The massive crystal ships moved through space like floating mountains. Their surfaces caught the light from the distant red star and threw it back in brilliant flashes of blue and white. Each ship was the size of a small city, with towers and spires that reached out like fingers grasping at the darkness. These were the war vessels of the Zephyrian Empire, and they had been fighting in this same patch of space for longer than most species had existed on the other side of the battlefield. The ships of the Void Syndicate waited. These vessels looked like they had grown rather than been built. Black metal twisted and curved in organic shapes, with tubes and cables running along their hulls like veins. Strange growths pulsed with sickly green light, and weapon ports opened and closed like breathing mouths. The Syndicate ships were just as large as the Zephyrian fleet, and just as deadly. Between the two fleets stretched a graveyard of metal and crystal. The wreckage of 1,000 battles floated in the void, some pieces so old they had become home to strange space creatures. Ancient hull plates drifted past weapon fragments. Broken engines still leaked fuel that had long since frozen into glittering clouds. This was the Kethver system, and it had been a battlefield for 300 years. Admiral Krikstal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Storm. His people were tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of living glass. When he moved, light flowed through his body in patterns that showed his emotions. Right now, those patterns showed calm confidence. He had fought this battle many times before. "Status report," he said to his crew. His voice made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "All ships ready, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. The enemy maintained standard formation. "Their War Prime's vessel is in the center, just as always." Krikstal nodded. Of course it was. This was how these battles went. The Void Syndicate would arrange their ships in the same pattern they had used for decades. His own fleet would take the formation that had been used by his father and his father's father before him. They would dance their deadly dance, fire their weapons, and some ships would be lost. Then they would retreat, rebuild, and do it all again in a few months. This was war as the Zephyrians understood it. This was honor. This was tradition on the other side of the battlefield. War Prime Nexus felt the biomechanical implants in his skull pulse with anticipation. Unlike the Crystal people, the Syndicate had modified their bodies with technology. Nexus was more machine than flesh now, with metal plates covering half his face and mechanical arms that could crush steel. His ship, the Death's design, was as much a part of him as his own heart. "The Crystal Spawn hold their usual positions," reported his sensor officer. Like all Syndicate crew, she was connected to the ship's systems through cables that plugged directly into her spine. "Their Admiral sends the standard challenge." Nexus's mechanical jaw clicked as he processed this information. The challenge would be the same as always. A formal declaration of intent to do battle. A request that both sides prepare for honorable combat. A promise that prisoners would be treated well and that the battle would end when one side retreated. "Send the standard response," he ordered. "Tell them we accept their challenge and look forward to crossing weapons once more." This was how it had always been. The two fleets would exchange polite messages before trying to destroy each other. It was civilized. It was proper. It was the way war should be fought. The battle began exactly as both commanders expected. The Zephyrian ships moved forward in a line, their crystal hulls shimmering as their shields activated. Their weapons were things of beauty, energy beams that looked like solid light cutting through space. When they fired, it was like watching a symphony of destruction. Each shot timed perfectly with the others. The Syndicate responded with their own advance. Their ships moved like living things, bending and twisting as they flew. Their weapons were different but just as devastating. Bioenergy cannons that fired streams of corrosive plasma. Missile pods that launched swarms of self-guiding warheads. Living torpedoes that could think and adapt as they flew toward their targets. For 2 hours, the fleets traded shots according to patterns that had been established over centuries of conflict. Ships would advance, fire, retreat, regroup, and advance again. When a vessel took too much damage, its crew would abandon ship and be picked up by the enemy. When a captain showed particular bravery, both sides would acknowledge it over the communication channels. Admiral Krickstall watched the battle unfold with the satisfaction of a master artist. His fleet was performing well today. They had already disabled 3 syndicate vessels and had only lost one of their own. The patterns of movement were particularly elegant, and he made a mental note to compliment his tactical officer later. "Admiral," his communications officer suddenly called out, "I'm detecting an unusual transmission." Krickstall's attention focused on the officer. Unusual transmissions were rare during battle. Both sides knew all the proper codes and procedures. "What kind of transmission? It's not from the syndicate, sir. It's coming from the edge of the system. The signal is weak, but getting stronger. Someone is approaching. This was unexpected." The Kethver system was restricted space. No other species was allowed here during combat operations. Both the Zephyrian Empire and the Void Syndicate had agreements with all the major powers to keep this area clear during their battles. Across the battlefield, War Prime Nexus was receiving similar reports. His sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion that her mechanical modifications could not quite hide. "War Prime, we have an unidentified vessel entering the system. It does not match any ship design in our database." Nexus felt his implants surge with curiosity. In 300 years of conflict, no outside force had ever interrupted their battles. The very idea seemed impossible. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen shifted to display long-range sensor data. There, at the very edge of detection range, was something that should not exist. A ship that was clearly artificial but built from materials that made no sense. The hull appeared to be made of simple steel and ceramic composites. The design was blocky and crude, without the elegant curves of Zephyrian crystal shaping or the organic flow of syndicate bioengineering. Most puzzling of all, the ship was small. Compared to the massive battle cruisers of both fleets, this new vessel was tiny. It was perhaps 1/10 the size of the smallest ship currently engaged in combat. Yet somehow it was moving faster than anything that small should be able to move. Both Admiral Krickstall and War Prime Nexus came to the same conclusion at almost the same moment. This had to be some kind of scout ship or courier vessel. Perhaps it carried an important message from one of the galactic powers. The polite thing to do would be to pause the battle and find out what it wanted. Neither commander could have imagined that this small, crude-looking ship would change everything they thought they knew about war. Neither could have guessed that. The beings aboard that vessel came from a species that did not fight for honor or tradition or ceremony. They came from a species that fought only to win. The unknown ship continued its approach, and both fleets began to slow their attack patterns. After 3 centuries of ritualized combat, they were about to encounter something they had never seen before. They were about to meet humans. The unknown ship grew larger on the sensors with each passing minute. Both fleets had stopped firing at each other, something that had not happened in living memory. The Zephyrian and Syndicate vessels hung in space like 2 groups of giants. Watching a small child walk between them, Admiral Krickstall studied the readings his sensors were giving him. The numbers made no sense. The approaching ship was indeed made of primitive materials, yet it was moving at speeds that should have torn such a crude vessel apart. Its hull showed signs of recent battle damage, but it flew straight and steady as if nothing could slow it down. "Analysis," he ordered his science officer. The crystal being's internal light flickered as she processed the data. "Admiral, the vessel appears to be constructed using basic metallurgy and ceramic compounds. Technology level suggests an early spacefaring civilization. However, its propulsion system is reading at efficiency levels that exceed our own drives." "That's impossible," Krickstall said. "No species with such primitive construction techniques could achieve those power outputs." "The sensors do not lie, Admiral. There's something else. The ship is broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but the signals are encrypted using methods we have never encountered." Across the battlefield, War Prime Nexus was having similar problems understanding what he was seeing. His biomechanical Systems ran calculations through his modified brain at lightning speed, but every answer they produced seemed wrong. The ship's mass is too low for its size, his tactical officer reported. Either it is mostly empty space inside, or it is built from materials lighter than anything in our database. Yet our scans show the hull is solid metal. Nexus felt his implants surge with frustration. As a war prime, he had been modified to understand battle tactics and ship designs better than any unmodified being could. His mechanical brain contained the specifications for every known vessel type in the galaxy. This ship matched none of them. Distance to unknown vessel? He asked, closing to communication range in 10 minutes, War Prime. Nexus made a decision that surprised even himself. He opened a channel to his ancient enemy. Admiral Crickstall, I believe we need to discuss this situation. On his bridge, Crickstall's light patterns showed his own surprise. Direct communication between fleet commanders during battle was not part of their traditions. But these were not traditional circumstances. I agree, War Prime. Shall we follow the ancient protocols for neutral contact? Agreed. Both fleets will maintain current positions. Neither will target the unknown vessel without mutual consent. It was the first time in 300 years that the two sides had cooperated on anything. The unknown ship had achieved something that centuries of peace talks had failed to do. It had made enemies work together. The mysterious vessel continued its approach. As it grew closer, both fleets could see more details. The ship was long and angular, with weapon ports that looked different from anything they had seen before. Instead of the elegant energy projectors used by advanced civilizations, these weapons looked like simple metal tubes. Yet something about them seemed dangerous in a way that made experienced warriors nervous. Incoming transmission. Both communication officers announced at almost the same time. The signal that came through was clear and strong. BROADCAS 10 standard galactic frequencies? But the voice that spoke was unlike any either species had heard. Before, it was rough and harsh, without the musical tones of the Zephyrians or the mechanical precision of the Syndicate. This is the UES Indomitable. You will cease hostilities immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Crickstall's light patterns flickered with confusion. The words were spoken in galactic standard, but the grammar was strange. More importantly, the tone was wrong. There were no formal greetings, no acknowledgement of rank or status, no polite requests for permission to enter the battle zone. War Prime Nexus felt his combat systems activate automatically. The message was clearly a threat, delivered without any of the courtesies that civilized species used when addressing military forces. His mechanical jaw clenched as he processed the implications. Both commanders responded at the same time, their transmissions overlapping on the communication channels. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Crickstall of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are entering a restricted combat zone. State your identity and purpose. Unidentified ship, this is War Prime Nexus of the Void Syndicate. You are interrupting a formal military engagement. Withdraw immediately or be considered hostile. The response came back almost instantly, and it chilled both leaders in ways they had not expected. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Authority. We are human. This is your only warning. Human. Neither species had ever heard that word before. Their databases contained no reference to any race calling themselves by that name. In all their centuries of war, they had encountered dozens of other species, but none had ever been unknown to them. Computer, search all records for species designation human, Crickstall ordered. No records found, Admiral. Nexus was running similar searches through his own systems. The Syndicate had more extensive databases, including information gathered through less legal means. But even their vast collection of galactic intelligence contained no mention of humans. Where do you come from? Crickstall transmitted to the human ship. What sector do you represent? Captain Vasquez's response was delayed by several seconds. When it came, her voice carried a tone that both alien commanders recognized as dangerous. We come from Sol System. We represent Earth, and we're here because we've been watching your little war for months. Impossible, War Prime Nexus sent back. No species has observed our conflicts without our knowledge. Both our empires maintain extensive sensor networks throughout this region. Your sensor networks are garbage, came the blunt reply. We've had stealth probes watching your battles since we entered this sector. We know all about your 300-year dance party. The words hit both commanders like physical blows. This human was calling their ancient conflict, their honored tradition, their sacred war, a dance party. Crystal's light patterns flared bright red with anger. You dare insult our military heritage? Our conflicts are conducted according to the highest standards of civilized warfare. Civilized warfare, the human captain repeated, and somehow she made the words sound like a curse. Is that what you call this? We've recorded 17 of your battles. Do you want to know what we learned? Neither commander answered, but the human continued anyway. You fight like children playing with toy soldiers. You follow the same patterns. Every time. You give your enemies time to retreat when they're losing. You rescue each other's crews. You even stop fighting to exchange compliments. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of ship systems. Both Admiral Crystal and War Prime Nexus felt something they had never experienced before. They felt shame, not for their actions, but for how those actions appeared to this unknown species. This is war, War Prime Nexus finally transmitted. This is how civilized beings conduct military operations. Captain Vasquez's laugh was harsh and bitter. This isn't war. This is performance art. You want to see what real war looks like? The human ship was now close enough for detailed scans. Both fleets could see that it was indeed damaged. The hull showed signs of recent combat with scorch marks and impact craters across its surface. Yet it flew with the confidence of a vessel that had won whatever fight had marked it. We are not interested in your opinions, Admiral Crystal transmitted coldly. Withdraw from this system or be fired upon. Both our fleets will target your vessel if you do not leave immediately, War Prime Nexus added. There was another pause before the human responded. When Captain Vasquez spoke again, her voice carried a promise that made both experienced military leaders feel suddenly afraid. You think you know war. You know nothing about war. You play at it. We perfected it. The human ship's engines suddenly flared brighter, and it began moving faster than either fleet thought possible. Within seconds, it had positioned itself directly between the two forces, in the exact center of the ancient battlefield. Last chance, Captain Vasquez said. Stand down now, or learn what happens when you threaten humans. Both fleets powered up their weapons. Neither Admiral Crystal nor War Prime Nexus could have imagined that they had just made the worst tactical decision of their very long military careers. The weapons of both fleets began to charge with energy. Crystal cannons hummed with building power while bioenergy systems pulsed with deadly force. 200 ships prepared to focus their fire on a single small vessel that had dared to challenge. Then both Captain Elena Vasquez watched the targeting systems lock onto her ship. The Use Indomitable was alone, outnumbered by hundreds to one, facing weapons that could vaporize mountains. Any sane commander would have retreated. Any civilized captain would have attempted further negotiations. Elena Vasquez was neither sane nor civilized by galactic standards. She was human. Transmission incoming from both fleets, her communications officer reported. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Ignore them, Elena said calmly. Weapons are our main guns ready? All systems green, Captain. Fusion. Torpedoes loaded and ready to fire. Good, tactical. Show me the formation patterns these aliens have been using. The main screen displayed months of recorded battle data. The alien fleets always arranged themselves in the same basic patterns. The Zephyrians favored a line formation that maximized their energy weapon coverage. The Syndicate preferred a curved arrangement that allowed their bioships to support each other with overlapping fields of fire. Predictable, Elena muttered. They fight like they're performing a ballet instead of trying to kill each other. Her tactical officer studied the alien formations with professional interest. Captain, their positioning leaves several weak points. If we could force them to fire on each other. Exactly what I was thinking. Helm, prepare for combat maneuvers. I want full acceleration on my mark. Admiral Krickstall watched the human ship with growing confusion. It was not retreating. It was not requesting terms for surrender. It was simply sitting there in the middle of the battlefield as if 200 warships were not targeting it. Admiral, his tactical officer said, the human vessel is not powering up its shields. What? Krickstall's light patterns shifted to show disbelief. That's impossible. No ship enters combat without shields. I'm reading minimal defensive energy, sir. Either their shield generators are offline, or they're choosing not to use them. Warprime Nexus was receiving similar reports. His biomechanical brain ran calculations at superhuman speed, but every analysis produced the same impossible result. The human ship was preparing to fight without proper defenses. Perhaps their shield technology is incompatible with their primitive hull materials, his science officer suggested. Or perhaps they're insane, Nexus replied. His combat implants were sending warning signals through his nervous system. Something felt wrong about this situation, but he could not identify what. The communication channel crackled to life again. Captain Vasquez's voice cut through the static with cold precision. Before we begin, I want you both to understand something. You asked who we are? You want to know about humans? Let me show you. The main screens of both flagships suddenly displayed images that neither species had ever seen before. Scenes of battles fought on a blue-green planet, armies clashing with primitive weapons, cities burning under aerial bombardment, nuclear explosions turning entire landscapes into glass. This is our homeworld, Vasquez continued. These are our wars. We have been fighting each other for our entire history. We learned to kill with rocks and sticks. We learned to kill with fire and metal. We learned to kill with poison gas and atomic weapons. The images continued, massive battles involving millions of soldiers. Ships fighting in storms while crews died around their guns. Aircraft dogfights where pilots rammed enemy planes when they ran out of ammunition. Admiral Krickstall stared at the footage in horror. These humans fought without honor, without rules, without any concern for proper military conduct. They used tactics that would be considered war crimes by galactic standards. We fought wars that lasted for years, Vasquez said. Wars that killed hundreds of millions. Wars where entire civilizations were wiped out. And we learned something that you apparently never did. The images stopped. Both alien commanders waited for the human to continue. We learned that war isn't a game. It isn't art. It isn't tradition. War is about winning. War is about making the other side stop fighting by any means necessary. Warprime Nexus felt his combat systems reaching full readiness. His ship's weapons were locked onto the human vessel. All he had to do was give the order to fire. You've been playing at war for 300 years, Vasquez continued. You fight according to rules and traditions. You worry about honor and proper conduct. You treat battles like sporting events where everyone gets a trophy for participating. Her voice hardened. That ends today. Fire, Admiral Krickstall ordered. All weapons, engage target. Warprime Nexus commanded at the same moment. 200 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Energy beams and plasma streams converged on the space where the human ship had been. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The human ship was not there. Target has moved, the Zephyrian tactical officer reported with surprise. How did it move that fast? The Indomitable had accelerated at a rate that should have turned its crew into paste against the bulkheads. It was now racing directly toward the Zephyrian fleet at impossible speed. Pursuit course, Krickstall ordered. All ships target the human vessel. The crystal ships began to turn to track their target, but the human ship was already changing direction again. It dove under the Zephyrian formation and came up behind them, moving so fast that their targeting systems could barely keep up. Warning. Shots, Nexus commanded his fleet. Drive them back toward our position. The Syndicate ships opened fire, but their shots passed through empty space. The human vessel seemed to know where they were going to shoot before they fired. Elena watched. The alien formations began to break apart as both fleets tried to track her ship. Just as I thought, she said with satisfaction. They've never fought an opponent who doesn't follow their rules. Captain, her weapons officer called out, both fleets are converging on our position. They're going to catch us in a crossfire. Perfect. Elena replied, that's exactly what I want them to do. The Indomitable suddenly stopped its wild maneuvering and hung motionless in space. Both alien fleets immediately focused their fire on the stationary target. At the last possible second, the human ship moved again. But this time it moved sideways, slipping between the converging weapon streams, the energy beams and plasma bolts that had been aimed at the human ship continued on their original paths. They struck the ships on the opposite side of the formation. Zephyrian weapons hit Syndicate vessels. Syndicate weapons hit Zephyrian ships. Cease fire! Both commanders ordered at the same time, but it was too late. The damage was done. Ships on both sides were reporting hull breaches and system failures. Impossible, Admiral Crixtal whispered. They tricked us into firing on each other. War Prime Nexus felt something he had not experienced in decades of combat. He felt fear. Not fear of death or injury, but fear of an enemy who fought in ways he could not understand or predict. All ships, new formation, he transmitted to his fleet. Spread out. Do not let them force us into another crossfire. But the human ship was already moving again. It launched something from its hull, objects too small for the alien sensors to track properly. Within seconds, explosions began erupting. Throughout both fleets, what are they firing? Crixtal demanded. Unknown weapon type, Admiral. The projectiles appear to be solid matter moving at extremely high velocity. Kinetic weapons? Crixtal's light patterns showed confusion. No civilized species uses kinetic weapons in space combat. The human ship's voice cut through the chaos. Again, you want to know what those are? They're called bullets. Pieces of metal fired very fast. We've been killing each other with them for thousands of years. More explosions rocked the alien fleets. The human weapons were crude but devastatingly effective. They punched through energy shields that were designed to stop particle beams and plasma bolts. This is impossible, War Prime Nexus said. No species would choose such primitive weapons when advanced energy systems are available. You're thinking like civilized beings, Vasquez replied. We're not civilized, we're human. And we use whatever works. The battle continued, but it was unlike anything either alien fleet had ever experienced. The human ship moved like it was alive, anticipating their attacks and turning their own weapons against them. It used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Status report, Elena called out as her ship rolled through another impossible maneuver. Hull integrity at 80%, her damage control officer reported. We're taking hits, but nothing critical. Good. Weapons? Ammunition at 60%. Fusion torpedoes still ready. Elena smiled coldly. Time to show them what real weapons look like. Admiral Crixtal and War Prime Nexus both realized at the same moment that they were not fighting a battle. They were being taught a lesson and they were failing the class. The fusion torpedo launched from the Indomitable with a flash of blue-white light. Both alien fleets watched in confusion as the single projectile streaked toward the largest Zephyrian cruiser. Their sensors showed it was moving fast, but not impossibly so. It looked like a standard missile that their point defense systems could easily intercept. They were wrong. The torpedo detonated 50 meters from the crystal ship's hull. The explosion was unlike anything either species had ever seen. Instead of the focused energy bursts they were used to, this weapon released the same force that powered stars. The blast wave tore through space and the massive Zephyrian cruiser simply ceased to exist. Impossible, Admiral Crixtal whispered. His flagship sensors were telling him that a ship the size of a small city had been completely destroyed by a single weapon. No missile could carry that much energy. Captain. Vasquez's voice came over the communication channel, cold and matter-of-fact. That was a fusion warhead. We split atoms to make it. It's the same process that makes our sunshine, except we made it happen very fast and very close to your ship. War Prime Nexus felt his biomechanical systems overload with shock. His combat implants were designed to calculate tactical responses to any threat, but they had no data for this. No species in the galaxy used weapons that could destroy capital ships with a single shot. "You're using stellar-level forces as weapons?" he transmitted, his voice distorted by electronic processing. That's barbaric." "That's effective," Vasquez replied. "And we have 47 more just like it." Both fleets began to spread out, trying to avoid being caught in the blast radius if the humans launched another fusion torpedo. But the human ship was already moving again, weaving between the alien vessels with impossible grace. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," Admiral Krikstal ordered. "Maximum power to all weapons." The crystal ships responded, their energy cannons charging to full capacity. Beams of pure light lanced out toward the Indomitable, enough firepower to melt an asteroid. The human ship's shields flared as the energy struck, but it did not slow down. "Their shields are failing," the Zephyrian tactical officer reported. "Next volley should finish them." But the next volley never came. As the crystal ships recharged their weapons, something small and dark detached from the human vessel. Then another and another. "What are those?" Krikstal demanded. "Unknown objects, Admiral. They're too small for our sensors to get a clear reading." The small objects moved like living things, darting between the alien ships faster than anything mechanical should be able to move. They seemed to know exactly where to go, as if they had detailed maps of every vessel in both fleets. The first explosion came from inside a Syndicate bioship, then another from a Zephyrian cruiser. Within minutes, ships throughout both fleets were reporting internal explosions and system failures. "Boarding parties," War Prime Nexus realized with horror. They launched boarding parties. But these were not the boarding parties that civilized species used. Those involved formal challenges, honor duels between champions, and careful rules to protect non-combatants. These human boarders had no interest in honor or rules. On the Syndicate vessel Death's Hunger, the crew was experiencing something they had never trained for. The humans had cut through the hull using tools that melted metal like butter. They moved through the ship's corridors like predators, using weapons that fired metal projectiles faster than the eye could follow. "Intruders on Deck 7, the ship's captain reported over the communication system. They're not following boarding protocols." The human Marines wore armor that made them look like walking tanks. Their faces were hidden behind faceplates that glowed with electronic displays. They spoke in short, sharp bursts of code that the aliens could not understand. Corridor secured. Charges set. Moving to next objective. They did not challenge the alien crew to duels. They did not announce their intentions or demand surrender. They simply disabled everything they encountered with ruthless efficiency. On the Zephyrian ship Crystal Dawn, the crew was having similar problems. The humans had somehow bypassed all their security systems and were moving through the ship like they had built it themselves. "They know exactly where our critical systems are located," the ship's engineer reported to Admiral Krikstal. "It's as if they have complete blueprints of our vessels." Impossible," Krikstal replied. "Our ship designs are classified at the highest levels." But the humans did know. They had been watching these battles for months, recording everything. Their artificial intelligence systems had analyzed every ship design, every weapon system, every weakness. When they finally acted, they knew their enemies better than the enemies knew themselves. The boarding actions lasted exactly 17 minutes. When they were over, half the ships in both fleets were dead in space. Not destroyed, not evacuated, just stopped. Their engines were offline. Their weapons were disabled, and their crews were trapped inside their own vessels. "Status report," Elena called out from the bridge of the Indomitable. Her ship had taken significant damage during the battle, but it was still fighting. "Boarding teams report objectives secured," her tactical officer replied. "Enemy fleets are effectively neutralized." "Good. Signal the recovery shuttles. Time to collect our people." Admiral Krikstal watched in amazement as small craft launched from the human ship and began docking with the disabled vessels. The human boarding parties were extracted as efficiently as they had been deployed. "They planned this," he said to his bridge crew. "Every move, every tactic. They knew exactly how we would respond." War Prime Nexus was coming to the same realization. His biomechanical brain was processing the battle data, and the conclusions it reached were terrifying. The humans had not just defeated them. They had played with them. Every alien move had been anticipated and countered. "War Prime," his communications officer called out. "The human ship is hailing both flagships." "Put them through," Nexus replied, "Captain." Vasquez's image appeared on the main screens of both command ships. She looked exactly like what she was, a human who had just won a battle against impossible odds and was not particularly impressed by the accomplishment. "Admiral Krickstall." "War Prime Nexus, I think it's time we had a proper conversation." Both alien commanders found themselves agreeing without quite understanding why. There was something in the human captain's voice that made arguments seem pointless. "Your fleets are disabled but not destroyed," Vasquez continued. "Your crews are alive but confined to quarters." This was a demonstration, not an execution. "Do you understand what just happened here?" Admiral Krickstall's light patterns showed confusion. "And defeat. You defeated us both simultaneously. How is that possible?" "You fought according to patterns," Vasquez explained. "Patterns that never changed in 300 years. You sent formal challenges before attacking. You arranged your ships in formations from textbooks. You followed rules that made you predictable." War Prime. Nexus felt his combat implants trying to process this information, but warfare requires structure. Strategy demands organization. How can you fight effectively without following proper military doctrine? Vasquez smiled, and both aliens realized it was not a pleasant expression. "That's the difference between us. You fight to follow rules, we fight to win." The communication screen split to show tactical displays of the battle that had just ended. The human ship's movements were highlighted in red, showing how it had maneuvered both fleets exactly where it wanted them. "Lesson 1, Vasquez said, your enemy will not follow your rules. Lesson 2, if you always do the same thing, you will always lose to someone who doesn't. Lesson 3, real war is not about honor or tradition. It's about making the other side stop fighting." She paused to let that sink in before continuing. "You've been playing soldiers for 3 centuries. We've been killing each other for 3,000 years. The difference shows." Both alien commanders realized they had just learned more about warfare in 17 minutes than they had in their entire military careers, and they were terrified by what they had learned. The silence in space was broken only by the hum of life support systems. 200 ships floated dead in the void, their crews trapped inside their own vessels. The wreckage of 3 centuries of civilized warfare drifted around them, but now it looked different. Now it looked like the remains of children's games compared to what they had just witnessed. Admiral Krickstall found himself aboard the human ship, though he could not remember agreeing to come. His crystal body felt strange in the artificial gravity, and the air tasted of metal and recycled atmosphere. Everything about the human vessel was crude and functional, built for purpose rather than beauty. War Prime Nexus stood beside him, his biomechanical system struggling to adapt to the ship's environment. His combat implants were still sending warning signals through his nervous system, but there was nothing left to fight. The battle was over before it had truly begun. Captain Elena Vasquez entered the room where they waited. She was smaller than either alien commander had expected, barely reaching Krickstall's shoulder and dwarfed by Nexus's mechanical bulk. But she moved with the confidence of someone who had just proven that size did not matter when you knew how to use what you had. "Gentlemen," she said, taking a seat across from them, "we need to talk about the future." "What future?" Admiral Krickstall asked. His light patterns showed defeat and confusion. "You have destroyed our fleets. Our empires will demand revenge for this attack." Vasquez shook her head. "Your fleets aren't destroyed. Your crews are alive, and your empires are going to thank me for what I did here today." War Prime Nexus felt his mechanical jaw click as he processed this statement. You believe we will be grateful for our defeat? You will be grateful for the lesson, Vasquez replied. Because what I just showed you is nothing compared to what's coming. She activated a holographic display that showed a map of local space. Red dots marked the positions of human colonies, and both aliens were shocked to see how many there were. The humans had spread through this sector faster than any species in galactic history. 3 years ago, humanity joined the galactic community, Vasquez explained. We've been watching, learning, and expanding. What we found was disappointing. The display shifted to show other conflicts throughout the region. Battles between different species, all following the same patterns of civilized warfare that the Zephyrians and Syndicate had demonstrated. Everyone fights the same way, Vasquez continued. Formal challenges, honor duels, rules of engagement that protect the losers. Wars that last for centuries because nobody really wants to win. Admiral Krikstal's light patterns flickered with anger. Those traditions exist for good reasons. They prevent the complete destruction of civilizations. They maintain order and prevent chaos. They maintain stagnation, Vasquez corrected. You've been fighting the same war for 300 years and accomplished nothing except killing millions of your own people for entertainment? The words hit both alien commanders like physical blows, entertainment. That was how this human saw their ancient conflict. Our war has meaning, War Prime Nexus protested. It maintains the balance of power in this region. It prevents either empire from dominating the other. Vasquez laughed, a harsh sound that made both aliens uncomfortable. Your war is a joke. A performance that wastes resources and accomplishes nothing. Do you want to know what real balance of power looks like? The display changed again, showing new information that made both commanders step back in shock. Human military installations throughout the sector. Weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Ship construction facilities that could build vessels faster than either empire had thought possible. While you were playing your war games, we were building a real military, Vasquez said. We now have enough firepower in this sector to destroy both your empires if we choose to, but we don't want to destroy you. We want to use you. Use us? Krikstal asked. The galaxy is bigger than this one system, Vasquez explained. There are threats out there that your civilized warfare won't be able to handle. Pirates who don't follow your rules. Alien species who see your politeness as weakness. Forces that will require real military action to stop. She stood up and walked to a window that looked out at the disabled fleets. Your empires have resources, technology, and people. We have the knowledge of how to use them effectively. Together we can build something that will protect this entire region. War Prime Nexus felt his biomechanical systems analyzing the proposal. You want us to become your vassals. I want you to become our partners, Vasquez corrected, but not as equals. You've proven today that you don't understand real warfare. We do. So we'll make the strategic decisions, and you'll provide the resources to carry them out. Admiral Krikstal's light patterns showed deep thought. And if we refuse? Vasquez's expression did not change, but both aliens felt the temperature in. The room seemed to drop. Then your 300-year war ends today. Permanently, we'll pacify both your empires and take what we need directly. The threat was delivered calmly, without emotion, and that made it more terrifying than any dramatic declaration would have been. Both commanders realized that this human was not bluffing. She had the power to do exactly what she promised. What? What would this partnership involve? War Prime Nexus asked. First, your war ends. Today, forever. The resources you've been wasting on fighting each other will be redirected to useful purposes. Vasquez activated another display showing detailed plans that clearly had been prepared in advance. Second, both your empires will combine their military forces under human command. We'll teach your people how to fight effectively. You want to retrain our entire military? Krikstal asked. Your military doesn't need retraining. It needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. What you call military forces are ceremonial units that wouldn't last 5 minutes against real opposition. The plans on the display showed new ship designs that combined human tactical doctrine with alien technology, weapon systems that prioritized effectiveness over elegance, training programs that focused on winning rather than honor. Third, Vasquez continued, both empires will contribute to a joint colonial expansion program. We've identified 17 systems in this sector that contain valuable resources but are currently unclaimed. War Prime Nexus studied the star charts with professional interest. Those systems are in disputed territory. Several other species have claims on them. Disputed claims that they can't enforce, Vasquez replied. Which brings us to the fourth point. Any species that interferes with our expansion will be dealt with using real military force. Both alien commanders realized what they were being offered, not just survival, but expansion on a scale neither empire had ever dreamed of. The cost was their independence and their military traditions, but the alternative was complete destruction. You're asking us to abandon everything our civilizations stand for, Admiral Crichton said. I'm asking you to abandon everything that's kept your civilizations weak and stagnant, Vasquez corrected. Your empires have the potential to be great powers in this galaxy. Right now, they're just expensive museums. She moved back to her chair and sat down, studying both aliens with calculating eyes. I'm going to give you 24 hours to decide. Discuss it with your governments. Run whatever analysis you want. But understand that this offer expires tomorrow. And then? War Prime Nexus asked. Then we implement our own solution to the problems this region faces, with or without your cooperation. A human officer entered the room and whispered something to Captain Vasquez. She nodded and stood up. Your fleets are being repaired and refueled, she said to the alien commanders. Consider it a gesture of good faith. When you return to your empires, you'll be able to tell them that humans keep their word. Admiral Crichton felt his light patterns shifting to show confusion. You're releasing us? You're not prisoners, Vasquez said. You're potential allies who just learned an important lesson. Whether you choose to benefit from that lesson is up to you. As the alien commanders were escorted back to their ships, both realized that everything had changed. They had entered this system as proud military leaders of ancient empires. They were leaving as junior partners in an alliance they had not chosen but could not refuse. The age of civilized warfare was over. The age of human warfare had begun, and somewhere in the depths of space, other species were about to learn what that meant.